So I'll close this in the background. And this was done 100% in After Effects with no plugins. I mean, there's plugins you could always get. A lot of them are free, but this is strictly After Effects right here. No plugins. And like I said before, this edit, purge, all memory, and disk cache will really free up space on your computer. You'll notice the links broke on this, and that's easy enough. Whenever links break and you've still got your software, I mean, you still got your artwork, you just right click on it and go to replace footage file. So I right clicked, replace footage, and then choose file, and she's got everything here. So I just gotta link it back up to that folder. And this is one step even further, JPEGs and PNGs. I mean, that's great. So I'm looking for clock, it's right there. And it should find the other stuff in there, yep. And then this will be in your JPEGs folder, same thing. I select it, right click, replace footage. You could have all that in one folder, but I mean, you know, this is really nice. I like seeing organized work. Okay, and there we go. Yeah, no problem. Like I said, did you see how quick of a fix that was? So what I do, whenever students bounce me their work and I help them out and I make suggestions, I always save as, put my initials at the end, and then I email it to them so that you've got it for reference. All right. Now, first, we're going to dive into your storyboard. I was looking at this earlier. And I started writing some notes. I'm going to go over this first. It's super easy. I'll cover this last, but then I'll do this one second. So let's do 3 and then 2. All right. First concern I had was the perspective, but we'll cover that in a sec. So 3D ring, because I saw your logo, and you know, this right here, when I said it earlier, okay, so we won't have that spinning around. I'm going to make a new comp. (1920, 1080, 24p). Let's change this to 10 seconds for now. Hit OK. All right. Oh, hey, Parker. All right, so I'll just remember that that's your name. Great. All right, so first thing I want to go over was that ring. All right, and I said whenever you're doing something, let me hop back to here. Whenever you're doing something that's simple shapes like this, you should do it in After Effects. One, it's going to save you time because then you don't have to recreate it or turn it into artwork. And two, you've got far more options for animating this than if you did it in Illustrator. And I'll show you what I mean. So like your basic tools are right up here. And I'm just going to quickly do a circle. And the reason this has a gradient fill was I was using gradients recently, but I'm going to zoom in so that everyone can see this. Where's my magnifying glass? Here it is. But again, I'm so happy to see half the people uploaded stuff already. Makes me very happy to see that. Okay, once you've chosen any of the shape layers over here, you've got two options. There's fill and there's stroke. Now, the word fill, you click on that, and that's going to bring up if you're going to have a solid or a linear or a radial gradient. You know, so I could change this to a radial gradient from there, and you can change the opacity and the blending mode as well, should you choose to, all from inside that first thing. And the second button, the thumbnail, that's the color of the solid or the gradient that you're creating. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to make this red. So, you know, I click the first color I want to change, I'll make it red. And the second color, it's basically, I'll do a dark red, like that. Okay, so that is how you make your gradient and changing the colors. Now, the word stroke, if I click on that, you can add a stroke, and then you would change the size of the stroke right next to it. You could do a linear or a radial gradient, same thing with your blending mode and the opacity. And if you do not want a stroke, Just click on that to get rid of the stroke. All right, so that's the absolute basics of putting in your shape layer. Zoom back out, and let me zoom in here. I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. And this blue line around the artwork, that's distracting me. Right here, toggle mask and shape. If I click on that, the layer will still be selected, but that blue will not be distracting me. So it's just going to help me dial in my look a little faster. So I've got my shape layer. I'll call this planet. If you hit the enter key, you can rename it. Like that. And here's just what's inside that shape layer, the contents. It's an ellipse, and there's no stroke, and we have a gradient fill. So if I wanted to, I could adjust the start and end of these as I see fit. I'm going to play around with that highlight length in a second. Let me see something. And you can change the angle based upon where you want your light source to be. And then there's edit gradient. And that just pulls up the same settings we had before. So I'm going to do this. And if their shadow is over here, that means the light needs to be up there. So the light is hitting here and shining down to that way, creating a little bit of depth. So, you know, I just cheated some lighting here just to show you a little bit of options. Not everything has to be a flat color. You know, texture is nice, things like that. But again, like I said, creating your artwork in After Effects gives you flexibility. We learned week 1. I'm going to do a quick review for everyone. And I'll use a star. And I'm going to change this to a solid fill by clicking on the word fill. There we go. Okay. Step 1. This is going to be for every layer, every shape, everything you're animating. Step 1 is think about what you want to do, and then you figure out how you want to do it. All right. So what do I want to do? Let's have this swing around like a pendulum. So we know what the motion's going to be. Step 2 is moving the anchor point. And I said, remember, wherever you put the anchor point, it's going to drive the animation. It's going to affect how it is. And to change the anchor point, right here, next to the shape layers, is the pan behind tool. You use that. And if you hold down Command or Control, you can snap it to a center or an edge or a corner. So it's just faster that way. If I had my anchor point in the middle, and remember, you control down any arrow you want. So if I started rotating this in the middle, it's going to spin around like a propeller. That's not the motion I want. I want it to swing like a pendulum. So I would move it up to the top like such, and I can test it out. And yep, it's moving like a pendulum. So that's the first step. Well, actually the second step. We figured out what we want to do, and then we moved our anchor point based upon how we want it to move. Then you just move the playhead to where you want the motion to start. I'll just have it start here, and you click on the stopwatches that you need to animate. And I'm just going to do rotation for this. Then the next step, you just move the playhead however far you want and make a change. You can do it by sliding around numbers. Remember, this number here is degrees, and this one is full rotations, the one next to it. The closer the keyframes are to each other, the faster the motion will be, and the further apart they are, the slower the change will be over time, because we're just animating stuff over time and space. And again, you can animate anything you want, anytime you want. You just figure out where you want it to happen. So that's our basics from last week. You know, that's going to be what you do all the time. Now we're going to build upon that. These right here, the default, these are linear keyframes. And what that means is they don't speed up, they don't slow down. It's a constant velocity. like the second hand on a clock or gears of a motor spinning around. It's just constant, and that's, it has its purposes, but one of the things that makes animation look more professional, one of the first of the 12 principles of animation, they call it slow in, slow out. And you can automatically get that on After Effects you can hit F9, or you can just right click on your keyframes, go to Keyframe Assistant, and choose Easy Ease. And what that's going to do is we're going to slow out of this one, slow into that one, and over again down the line. And see, it's got a little bit more character and personality to it. This button right here is the graph editor. And I'm going to hit undo. This is the linear keyframes. See, it's a constant speed. There's no change to it. I'm going to hit redo. So it was Command Z and Command Shift Z. When I ease them, you can see that it's slowing out in this part right here. That's the fastest part of the motion. Then it's slowing back into here. That's the fastest part of the motion right there. It's building up speed, slowing into it over and over again. Okay, so this is all new for this week. We hit the speed graph and we easy eased our keyframes. Anyone need to see that again? Because it's all covered in the lectures that I've put up for everybody. I figure it's always better to ask questions in real time. If you have a question, just type it into the chat. Now this button right here, Fit All, that just magnifies into the graph and makes it the largest it can be. Oh yeah, I'll re-show you that, no problem at all. Here's your magnification right here. You can zoom in and out of the timeline. I'm going to hit undo. All right, so I set my keyframes just by moving the playhead where I want them to start, clicking on the stopwatch, moving the playhead, making a change. We did that part. You can select your keyframes by box clicking around them, marquee dragging. Yes, I'm going to show you that. All right, so I'll delete that and I'll go back to the beginning, set this to here. All right, so I move the playhead, clicked rotation, move forward a little bit, make a change, move forward a little bit, make another change, and you keep doing that. For however many keyframes. You need a minimum of 2 keyframes to animate anything. They have to be a minimum of 1 frame apart. The closer your keyframes are together, the faster the change will be. And the further apart they are, the slower that change will be happening. So that's the first part. We laid out our motion. Now we're going to be doing the speed graph. And again, like I said, to see keyframes in the speed graph, they have to be selected. And I just left click on my mouse and I drag there. Or if you want to make sure you get all your keyframes for that stopwatch, click the word rotation. Do not click the stopwatch again. If you click the stopwatch again, you lose all your keyframes. So you only click it once to set up your keyframes. So again, you can click and drag or just click the word for that stopwatch. The speed graph is right here. And this is just showing you, let me make sure I'm in the speed graph. Yep. Next to the the eyeball, this is where you can get to the speed graph. So I've got all my keyframes selected. I right click while hovering over one of them. Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And I'm going to go back to my speed graph. And I'm going to hit right here to zoom it in. Easy Ease gives you these influence handles. That's what allows you to speed up or slow down the velocity over time. Okay, and this is what professional motion design is all about. And I'm going to show you how to change the velocity in between keyframes. The yellow square here that I'm clicking on, that is where my keyframes are, okay? So that's what that yellow square means. Do not move that yellow square up or down. If you move this yellow square up or down accidentally, like that, that's going to change the amount of what's happening, how much it's rotating, or how far it moved, not the speed in and out of the keyframes. To do that, you click on the little yellow ball here and you just move it side to side, either way. And I'm going to explain what that change does. Here's our first keyframe, and here's the influence handle, the little yellow ball. If I click and drag and then hold down Shift, if I move it away from this keyframe, it's slowing down even more than it was. If I move it closer to the keyframe, it's speeding out of this. So if I wanted to speed into the next keyframe and come out slower from the first one, I move this away from that keyframe. Now it's going slower out of it. If I want to go faster into this, I grab this one right here and I move it closer into the second one. So it's slowly coming out of here, and now the fastest speed is right before it's going to reach that keyframe. And then I do the same thing for here. If I want to have it come a little bit faster out of here, I move it away from that keyframe. And if I want it to go very fast into this one, I can move it closer. And I'm going to have, just for a change of pace, I'm going to have it come very fast out of here and very slow into there. I'm just showing you the options. You can see how this is very fast, very slow. This is very slow, very fast. And I'll just go a little slower out of there, a little slower out of there. So now these curves look completely different. And see how the motion's different? You can all do the exact same keyframes, but you'll have your own unique speed graph and a keyframe interpolation right here, changing the velocity in and out of them. That's what makes professional motion design stand out. Thinking about if you want to go faster out of or slower into one keyframe into the other. You're just changing that speed from one to the next over and over again. And if you do my bouncing ball for this week, you'll see what I mean about thinking about how fast or slow you're going in and out of your keyframes. So I hope that helps. Just a quick reminder, the yellow square, that's your keyframe. Do not move it up or down. You want to try and keep it where it was. And you grab the yellow influence handle and you can drag it further away or closer to either of the keyframes. Further away from this, it's going slower out of it. Closer in, it's going faster into that one. And then if you're happy with the way it looks, you can click the speed graph to get out of it. And again, this is your zoom in, zoom out of the timeline. And you can always drag your keyframes around in the timeline to speed them up or slow them down. That's up to you as the designer. And see, I had to click here to select my keyframes to see the speed graph. You can also move them in the speed graph by moving the yellow square side to side. That will change when the keyframe happens in the timeline. But remember, do not drag that up or down. Hopefully that helps you out. And again, we're going to be going over this every week. So by like week 3 or 4, you'll definitely have a much stronger grasp on setting up your anchor point, clicking on the stopwatch, making your changes, easing your keyframes, and then adjusting your speed graph to get your own unique motion. Now, we're going to dive back into here and how I created some fake shading. And remember, I said you can animate anything with a stopwatch, and that's in your layers or with effects. So we can animate the light moving across this. And look, now we've got these handles to drag. So let's go 6 seconds. And if I drag this handle, I think I'm getting that handle because I've got the, no, even with the selection arrow, I still have that handle, but Let's see what that looks like. So we're getting that nice subtle change along the edge of our planet. Okay. So I'm just showing you anything with the stopwatch can be animated. Just move the playhead to where you want to do it. Click on that stopwatch or stopwatches. Move the playhead to how long you want that change to take place, and then make your changes. All right, so we faked a little bit of light moving with that planet, and I want to show you that 3D ring that was in the storyboard. Now, this one is like a week ahead of time, but I'll show you it now, because like I said, I'll show you anything you want to learn along the way to help you get the animation you want. A quick reminder from last week, if I have the shape layer selected while I add another shape to the scene, it's going to go inside that first shape. That's not what I want for this. So I deselect by clicking off, or you could hit Command Shift A or Control Shift A to deselect everything. Nothing's selected, so now if I draw my ring, or I should say I make the shape, it's going to be its own shape layer. So we've got the planet, and I'll call this one ring. And I'm going to center it by using my align panel. I don't want to do that, I'll put it right there. If you don't see your align panel, you just go Window, Align, and that's how you bring up the align panel. Now I don't want to fill, so I'm going to click the word fill and turn it off by clicking right there. I'm going to want a stroke, so I click on the word stroke, and I'll add a solid stroke to it. And now we have this going on. And it's not quite looking like yours. And the reason that is we need to cheat this to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. And anytime you want to do that with the layer, these are the switches and modes here at the bottom. These are your modes. They're blending modes and track mats and parenting. And if you click here, you can get to your switches. So you want to be in switches, and you just click on the little cube for that layer, and now it's 3D enabled. And they've got these gizmos that change things a bit. Let me see what we got right here. That's the one we want. So I'm just rotating this into space to give it a little bit of depth. And if you don't like using the gizmos, like see, that one's going to change the axis it's on. You could always just hit R for rotation or twirl down, and you can choose the specific axes you want to tilt this on, like such. So now you've got your shape and your 3D ring, but you'll notice it's, clipping off at the planet. It should be clipping off. So you want to add a trim path into here to get rid of that. And to do that, select the layer, go Add, Trim Paths. And you can animate trim paths to have things draw on or off. We'll be covering that a lot in this class. But if I just want it to be stationary, looks like it's 85.5. Sorry about the car honking its horn down the block. So I just changed the start and the end to sort of make it look like the planet is blocking it out now. That's one use for the trim path. And like I said, you could click these and animate them over time if you wanted. Another thing I want to go over while I'm talking about shapes in After Effects, I'm going to twirl down here and we'll go to the stroke for the ring. And our caps, I don't want butt caps, I'm going to do round caps. Now they're rounded, and I'm going to do a round join. And I could adjust that some more if I want, but that'd be adjusting the trim path and having that work again if I wanted to. But I just wanted to show you that look. And I also probably could, let me hit S for scale, do non-uniform. So now is actually good time to pull this up and show you. I'm going to zoom in. Okay. Our normal artwork is 2D, X and Y, side to side, up and down. When I 3D enabled this by making sure here's my modes, there's my switches, I clicked the cube right here to enable that. Now we've got X, Y, and Z, side to side, up and down, and then closer or further from the camera. So I can scale this based upon whichever axes I want as well to help fake that a little bit. See, now it's lining up much better. And you can always click off that chain to do non-uniform scaling, or keep that chain on to uniformly scale it. That's up to you as the artist, based upon the motion you want. Let me zoom out. So I just quickly wanted to touch down on the difference between 2D and 3D shapes. That just reminded me when I saw this. Now, let's review this storyboard. Okay, so the head with the sun, and okay, now this, second, perspective of the artwork, that's what I wanted to talk about next. Right here, it looks like you've got a, oh yeah, no problem. And this is just basics. We're gonna, if we've got time tonight, I'm gonna show you about like texturing and stuff like that, and that'll really help push this. And of course, this ring looks really ridiculous, so I'm gonna click on the color thumbnail and use my eyedropper and just try and tie it into the scene a little bit. Change the color slightly so it stands off of the planet. As you're designing, think about color contrast. Do you want maximum contrast, minimum contrast, complementary colors, things like that? The difference in values will really help with having your artwork stand out and draw the viewer's eye. It's all the more important because when you add things moving around, that's just going to complicate things. So you want it to be clean and clear with a definite view. Now your train that I saw, and I know this is just for reference, but here's one thing you've got to watch out for: perspective. This is fading off into the distance and it's coming in at an angle. So if you've got something going straight across the screen, make sure your reference matches the angle you want to put it in at, and you'll have a much better composition and a composited image. So watch the angles of things, the angles. Watch out for the angles of your artwork, and also the scaling. You want everything in the scene to make sense, unless you're going to do something like surrealist. Like if I had an egg, if I was holding an egg in my hand would be a lot bigger than that egg. So, you know, think about the relation of the scale of your artwork as you're working. So it looks like the train is going to drop off. Where's my real studio name? Okay, now, if you're going to have something reveal a studio name, there's a fast, easy way for that. Okay. I'm going to use a rectangle because, like I said, I always use... Yeah, I'm glad you're thinking of that. I'm always going to teach using basic shapes because it's faster and easier for me to do this. And it's all about teaching you the concept. No one wants to sit here and watch me draw a train over an hour. No one's going to learn anything doing that. So we'll pretend this rectangle is your train, okay? And I'm going to scale it up a tiny bit. All right, so we'll pretend this is your train. Whenever you use any of your tools over here, you might get different options in the properties over here. Like obviously I'm not going to be able to change the text around until I'm selected on the text. And I'm just moving everything around with the arrow tool right here. That's just for moving things to and fro. And also at this time, I'm going to point out whatever is on top of your layer stack will be on top visually. So I'm going to put the title below the train, like such. And here is the fast, easy way to reveal text when you've got something moving across it. So your train is going to go across the screen this way. That's position. So I'm going to, let's say we have it start animating right about here. I always zoom out a little bit when I am working with moving things off the screen to make sure it's completely off the screen. So like right here, it's completely off. The viewer is only going to see this part. This is your giant pasteboard here. They're not going to see it. So here's where it's going to start. And let's just have it take 2 seconds, I guess. And I'm just making my change. It's going straight across on the x-axis. So now you see it's completely off the screen. Okay, there we go. Now, if this is a train, it's not going to slow out of there and slow into there because it's a train. It'd roughly be going a constant speed, so I'm not going to easy easies. But if I wanted to, I could click and drag to select them, or click the word position, hover over one of them, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Then I could go into my speed graph and adjust the velocity of the 2 keyframes. Like if I wanted to go faster into the last keyframes, faster into here and a little slower out of there. Remember, you just grab the influence handle. So now I'm going slower out of there and faster into there. Actually, that might actually help this look a little more interesting. See, like that? So I'm glad I did that. Happy little accident. Now, here's our keyframes. And to see them, you could hit U to show or hide them with the layer selected. Right here, the whole title is covered up by the logo. I mean, the whole logo title is covered up by the train. Right there. It's completely covered. So what I can do is trim when this layer starts on the screen. If there's no keyframes, I could just hold down Shift and drag it and it snaps to that. That's one way. The other way is doing it this way. 1 second. Okay. Alt in this bracket, this first one right here, that's the in point when the layer starts. This is the out point when the layer stops, in and out. So if I hold down Alt, make sure I'm on the right layer, right here, the title. If I hold down Alt and then hit that bracket, this one right here, it's going to trim when that layer starts. So you don't see it here. The layer starts right there, train passes by it, and there's your title. It magically appears because this is the point when the title is fully blocked by that shape. And now it's being revealed as the train goes past. Okay, now I'll show you an example of changing the out point of a layer. Let's pretend I want this text right here to go away right here. I select that layer and I hold down Alt and hit this bracket to change the out point. And now that text just magically disappears. In point out point, in point, out point, like such. So I'm going to just delete that layer, and there's your text magically being revealed by the train, like such. And just some things to think about when we're looking at this. Depth. What if I took the title and put it below the ring? Now I've got that extra little bit of depth. This is interacting with that, and they're adding some space to it. Just some things to think about with your title and your animation. Little things like that help create more depth rather than making the image just look flat. So layer management. What's on top will be seen above what's below it, and you can have your layers start or end anywhere you want. Just watch out for trimming off keyframes. Like I'll hit U. If I have this start here, I'm just dragging the thing there, you're going to miss this part of the animation. So the earliest you could trim that is to just before that keyframe, so you still get that full amount of motion. And let's say you don't need this anymore, then I can just trim the out point for that layer, just to make it a little bit more visually. I could say, okay, the train is here from here to there, and I can tell just by looking at it. I don't need to hit U and pull up the keyframes. I can just visually tell because I trimmed that layer. That's another use for trimming the layers. And I'm going to show you all a little trick right now before I dive into the rest of this. I've got multiple layers on the screen now. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I've got the planet, the ring, the text, and the train. If you have multiple layers and you want to do uniform scaling or fake camera movements, a fast way of doing that is, well, you know, I'll save that for later because I don't want to throw too much at you right now. I've got you for 16 weeks, so we can do that next week, unless it pops up again tonight. And lastly, outer space. You had this still image spinning around. That's, you know, that's interesting, but you're in After Effects and you're learning motion design, and it's very fast and easy to create a 3D space that you can fly through, and like the stars will move past the camera and you'll go through clouds of gas, and that's with using particles. So if you do decide to use particles, I can teach you early on how to use them. Shape layer versus solid layer. These are shape layers. We created them with shapes right up here. Shape layers have path points. You can animate those path points like I showed you last week. Like if I grab the pen tool and I go like this, and I get rid of the fill and I give it a stroke, and I'll call this stroke. You can twirl down to the path, which is right there, and it has a stopwatch, which, like we said, you can animate the path. You just click on the stopwatch for it, and make sure you hold down Shift to deselect one of the points, and you can animate the path points, and you can also animate the Bezier curve handles. So you can animate both, and you can animate them together if you want, or you can animate them individually. It's all up to you as the designer. But that's shapes. They have path points. Okay, we're going to delete that. Now we're going to talk about solid layers. And to add anything new to your scene, you always go Layer, New. And here's where you can add text or solids, lights, cameras, whatever you see fit. There's shape layer, which we've already worked with. I'm going to add a solid, and I'll call this particles. You can change the size of this, or you just hit make comp size, and it'll automatically be full screen. And you can change your color here. I'm going to stick with black. I'll put this right behind everything. Okay, so solid layers. It's a solid color, and you can make it whatever size you want. It does not have path points. Solid layers are great for just putting in a flat color or applying an effect to it. I would suggest using particles for the sky, and like I said, we'll cover that in time. But this looks pretty interesting. I'm going to move on to the next one in a moment. Let's talk a second about texture. I could fake texture. Here's the planet with some noise if I wanted. Let's try Fractal Noise. Oops, wrong layer. So like that, and you can experiment with the drop downs to get different types of noise. And you can adjust the contrast and the brightness. You can also, if you go under transform, you can increase or decrease the scale to show or hide more of it. You can increase or decrease the complexity of the noise to make it more defined or softer. And you could also adjust the blending mode. So if I change it to luminosity, that's just the gray values of it. And you can see how that's affecting the original gradient we put over it. And then you just keep adjusting it as you see fit. Like such, that's one way of getting some texture to it. Another thing you do, if you click this FX right here, that'll show or hide gradients. I mean effects. So that's one way. And another way is actually getting a texture and then using this shape to cut out that texture. That'd be an alpha matte. And I'll dive into that next week. But I'm just showing you, you can add texture using noises. You can even animate those if you wanted, or you could grab actual textures and keep it the shape of your artwork. So like I said, just watch out for your perspective. Look for the scaling. Make sure it all makes sense. And I think you'd have something pretty interesting. Just watch your time management and, you know, think about your storyboard. I think camera motion will also help push this. I'll show you that over time. And, you know, just pick a really good font. Time and space. Maybe if you're going to do something like this as like your logo company, maybe the words will come out like and will be revealed, then time and space. We'll think about it, but it should be pretty interesting. We'll take a look and see how this develops. So nice job having some stuff to show tonight, Isabella, and we're going to go alphabetically. And we'll do Julia next. And I'll email that out once we're done. Okay, and I was saying earlier when I scrubbed through this, I was shocked by how quickly, I mean, you know, how elaborate this is. You don't need to be this elaborate with your storyboard, but I appreciate the time and the effort. Add glow and stars, okay. Into the effect. All right, now you have a lot of stationary objects. I would suggest trying to think of some ways of making this move. This is one of the problems when you've got non-organic shapes, like maybe the rolling pin can roll a little bit over the screen. That would be pretty neat. We would just have to watch the texturing of that as it's moving. And it's, let me see, having those glow, that's easy enough. Pictures. So let me demonstrate this real fast. Okay, so first we'll do the new comp. You can click here or go composition, 9 to 20, 10 seconds, sure. Okay. Let's represent the cake with a circle. And we'll pretend we're looking top down on it. I'm going to give a fill to this solid. Yeah, we'll pretend that's the icing. Sure, why not? All right. So here's our cake. All right, let's try and find a handwritten looking font. Let's see if I have one. Okay. Now, if you're going to animate this on, like it's being drawn on, you got to watch. This one's not too bad because it's these disconnects in it, but that would be trim paths again, revealing this. But you know, I'll show you that in a second. All right, yeah. All right. You could use this as a base. Like I'm going to lock it, and I could go in here and draw each part of it. So I'm going to give it no fill, and I'm going to give it a stroke, and it's going to be a color we don't have, red, just so it stands out. And it's definitely going to be a little bit smaller for the stroke. So if I go here, there, and then there, and make it about that thickness. Sure, we'll pretend it's that. Then I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to click here. I'm just tracing over each part of the letter like that. Okay, so we've got two to show you how this is going to go. I'm going to use round caps and round joins to make it look better, because I don't want squared off stuff if I'm going to try and make it look like icing. All that's under the stroke for each layer. And you know what? I'm going to delete that and do one layer, and I'll show you why in a second. Let me change that. You know what? I'll just start over one second. Okay, so I'm going to draw the first one, and I'll explain why I'm doing this in a second. Okay, there's my first bit that I'm going to have draw on. And if you're going to do letters drawing on, think about where they're going to start, where they're going to end, and the order they're going to come across, your animation hierarchy. So I'm going to go to my stroke, I'm going to give it a round cap and a round join. So I've got my artwork looking the way I want. And I could also say, you know what? Let's taper it a little bit because it's frosting and it's not going to be uniform. So that's going to be under stroke. There's taper. I twirled on taper. Let's have it get a little thinner and a little bigger like that. So now we've got something interesting happening. It's no longer just uniform. Okay. And you can adjust the easing of that if you want. All right. So there's our look and feel for the first stroke. And I said we're going to draw it on. Now with the trim path with the planet, we just changed the start and the end, and it didn't move, and it made it look like the planet was in the middle of that ring. To add anything to a shape layer, click on add up here or add down there. You need to be selected on the shape layer that you want to add it to. So I'm going to add trim paths, and we're going to have to animate this. I'm going to want it to start here and go in that direction. So let's preview that. Yep. So that means I'll be animating the end. The end is what's going to give me the draw on in the direction I want. So I've got my playhead where I want the motion to start. I clicked on the stopwatch, and I'm going to go forward however many frames I want and then make my change. So I'm going to be doing the end for all of this. The stroke is going like that over time with my trim path. And you go saying, well, why did you start over again? And here's exactly why I started over again. I've already tapered this, I've already got the color, and I've already put some keyframes on with my trim path. Now if I duplicate this layer by hitting Command D, it duplicates everything. The keyframes, the effect, the tapering, the color, So now I can grab this and move it. I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard. I'm going to look at which way it goes. So this is going to be, I want this to go down that way. So I'm going to need to change the path. There's my path. So with my path selected, I can now edit my path. So I'm going to move this one down here, this one to the middle, and this one up over there. And I'm just going to adjust my handles on the Bezier curves so that this looks the way that it should. Now, this is what I'm talking about with animation hierarchy. This stroke should not come down until, oops. That stroke is done. So I'm going to just slide these keyframes down there. So now that first one's going to draw on, then the next one's going to come out like such. You would have to do that for each letter if you're going to have them draw on. And then obviously I should have eased these by hovering over and right clicking. And you have it come out fast and go slower. So let's zoom in here. I'm going to have this come out very fast and get very slow in towards the end. Fast out, slow in. Like that. So it looks like a finishing touch. And for the first one, I could do the same. And now when I duplicate it, I'll have the speed graph copied for each one, and I can adjust them if I need to, or have them all have that same flourish. See that? See the difference? Now I check the timing, and I'm going to slide this layer a little bit. Just there's that little pause. See, like that. That's an example of a draw on. So think about that if you want to do a draw on with the lettering on the cake. Now let's talk about glows. Let's say we want the star or whatever that's going to be on your cake to glow. So we add a new layer. Remember, nothing selected, so it's its own layer. I'm going to give it a fill and no stroke. Change the fill color to yellow or whatever color you want it to be. So you're going to be working with a glow. That's an effect. And I'm going to throw it on here. Now, how do you change the taper on the pen stroke? Okay, see what you're saying? I'm going to create a new stroke over here. I'm going to get rid of the fill, and I'm going to go to the there, and I'm going to make it a little thicker. Okay, so to taper in here, here's our example layer, just so no one gets confused. I twirl down, stroke, and then you can change your round cap, round join if you want, or do butt cap. It's all up to you. Then there's taper and waves. I'm going to go to taper. The start is the first point you click, and you can adjust it to whatever amount you want. And then the end is the last point you click. So that's how you do that. And then the ease is how much you're going to have with that taper. So if you don't always need to do that. And also, as we learned, anything with a stopwatch can be animated over time. So I could have this start off without a taper and then begin to taper over time if you want. And if you want to draw on, you would add a trim path to it. So that's how you taper. You twirl down in your contents, shape, stroke, and there's taper. There's also wave if you want to add waves to it, the amount of waves you want. And you can also cycle those by how many there are. And phase would be how you animate it. So if I click here, I go forward, and let's say one full rotation, like such. You could do as many or as few as you want, and the number is how many there are in there. You could probably even animate that over time. Well, I know you could animate that over time if you want. So if I want to go from 3 to say 7, and then down to 0 over time. So you've got the number increasing plus the cycles giving it some life. And then it's animating itself off. That's just a little bit of fun things you can do with paths. You could also add things to them like wiggle paths and zigzag if you wanted. Let me show you what zigzag looks like. So I got there with the add menu having that layer selected. See, you can change the amount. You can have corners or smooth. And don't forget, you could also animate those over time if you wanted as well. How can you change the... All right, sorry, did that one. Okay, good. So I'm going to get rid of that layer. And like I said, we're going to be diving into this week after week after week. So by like week 4, most of this will be old hat to you. Now we're going to talk about glow. Okay, glows are light effects. And whenever you're working with a light effect, you want to be at your project. There's effects, there's project. And if you don't see project, it's a double white arrow right here. I'm already at 32 bits per channel. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. And I'm going to show you how to change that as well. Okay, so this is the new composition button. And you can have many compositions in a project and you can nest them inside. That's going to be in next week's lectures. Right here, by default, you'll see 8 BPC, 8 bits per channel. If you hold down Alt or Option while you click on that, you increase the bit depth. And basically the bit depth is how much dynamic range, like how much information you're going to see. And that's really important with light effects like light streaks and glows. So I'm going to go back to my effects because I already put the effect on it. What I did was typed in the effect I wanted to glow. I dragged it onto this layer and you can edit it in the effects controls. Project panels where you assemble all your artwork, and effect controls are where you edit your effects over time. So there's the draw on. Let's pretend everything drew on, and then we want the star to glow. So I'm going to animate the look I want first. Let's zoom in. And just a reminder, like I said, if those path strokes are distracting, you just click there to turn it off so you don't have to look at it. So the threshold is how much of this will cause that to start glowing. So if you've got things with like a gradient to them, this will be affected by it. It's like the values in that layer. So you choose that, and then the radius is how far that spread is going to be from the shape, and it will taper off over time. And the intensity is how bright the glow will be. Let's say this is what we want. And we want that to start like right here. So I'm going to click and then move forward let's say we want it to start glowing from here. So I went backwards. I'm just going to change these to 0. So it's going from what I designed right here, and I worked backwards. So there's the glow. And let's say I want it to be on here for this long. Well, I can just click my empty diamond. Now this keyframe is the same as this keyframe. There's no change over time. And then I can just copy these keyframes so I don't have to type in the effect again. And wherever you have the playhead, where you copy and paste your... Wherever you have the playhead is where you'll paste them. So I selected them, hit Command C, move my playhead, and hit Command V to paste them. So it's going from no glow to a glow. These keyframes right here are the same numbers. That's why there's no change over time. That's the way you keep them up. And then you paste. If you can't remember the empty diamond to create a keyframe, you could always copy, move your playhead, and paste. So these are exactly the same over time, and these are the same as that. Like such. So it's going to be like working with glows, and you can design your own stuff that you have happen. It's all up to you. But I would think about this and how you want the type to come on. And like I said, these are all inanimate objects. Whereas like with the planet, you could do camera push-ins. You could do camera work here. Camera work will work. Maybe the bowling pin rolls. You've got your pastry squeezer here. And let me demonstrate something to you. Like, it's all about pushing your ideas. That's what lab time is for. Okay, I'm going to do a super fast, sloppy mask job on this just so you can see the difference. Here you have the icing drawing itself on magically. It's always going to look better if you've got something motivated. So I'm going to import into my project that image by going File, Import, File. Saved it to my desktop. And I'm going to throw it into my composition. And let's scale it down first just so I could see the whole thing. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly mask this out. If you've got a layer selected when you use the pen tool, that's going to add a mask rather than draw a shape. I'm just telling you that now, but we'll go into that another week. And like I said, this is not perfect. It's just to give you the idea. Normally you'd want a full arm to explain why, that's, there. All right, so let's do P for position. Let's move this up. I'm going to click the position here. That's where it's going to end. So I'm going to animate that along. Let's move this just a frame or two before. Why is that going behind it? It should not be. Let's slide these down a little bit. There we go. Now it's following it. Okay, so that's the first one. And then I'm going to set a diamond keyframe there. And then right here, just so it takes a second to get over there, I'm going to reposition it. That's where the turn is going to happen. So it's just easier for myself to do it that way. And then worry about that curve next. Yep. Let's zoom out. Now pretend this hand was fully drawn. See the difference between explaining why the frosting's coming on as opposed to the frosting just magically appearing? If you've got a motivation for it, it's going to push the complexity of your animation. So that's something to consider. And you'd want to make sure you had the full arm so that it makes sense. But I would strongly encourage having something that makes sense. Even if you drew it yourself, you know, it's very easy to animate those shapes, and I'll help you with that. And again, you know, the rolling pin may be moving, and we could do some camera work too, but we'll see how that comes along. Like I said, just watch it when you've got everything's an inanimate object. Okay, so that's Julia. Let's see. Parker, no. Then Peter. Okay, so I looked at this briefly. Now, you've got an interesting graphic element, but if it starts off with the text already there, and there's only two elements, there's the word and the sword, almost like an Adventure Time, you know, you're going to have to come up with the interesting way for the words to come onto the screen. Adding some glow like we already did, and gradients, that's not advanced at all. You don't have to worry about that. And having this interweaving with the lettering, like back and forth within it to add some depth like we did with the planet, would be crucial. Having that just come in from the side, that's pretty easy. Actually, let me show you something real quick, because it is lab time. I'm going to introduce you to a new animation concept. 1 second. Okay, so if you went through the lectures up until now, you would have learned about easy ease, which is slow in, slow out, and squash and stretch for the bouncing ball. That is, hey, how's it going, Mason? You're a funny guy. Hope you're having a good semester at your new school. And it's always good to have you on the stream. So we're going over some of the 12 principles of animation, and we did easy ease, which is slow in, slow out, and then squash and stretch. That's what we covered in the lectures. Now, seeing this sword is, if the sword comes in, and we'll pretend it hits something right here, we're going to go over overshoot. All right, so I'm going to draw a sword, like a very rough sword. We'll go here. That'll be the hilt. There, like that. All right, so we'll pretend this is the sword. I'll make it a fill. And like I said, I always work with simple shapes so that you can learn faster rather than watch me draw something complex. All right, now we'll pretend it stops here at the 1 second mark. We'll have it coming pretty quick. Let's say right about there. And I'll hit P for position. And I'm going to work backwards and just drag it completely off the screen. I'm going to hold down Shift so it goes straight in. Now, if this hits something, it's not going to just go straight in. There's going to be some wiggle, okay? Now, I did my animating before I moved the keyframe. I mean, before I moved the anchor point. So I'm going to move the anchor point and then fix my keyframes. I'm going to move the anchor point to the tip of here, and you'll see why in a second. So, you know what? Actually, let's just delete those keyframes. Move the anchor point. I'm going to hold down Command or Control to snap it. Now I'm just going to click there, go back a little bit, and move it back up. All right, so now it's here. But like I said, there'll be some jiggling and swaying up and down, and that's going to be the overshoot. So there's the point of impact, and it's going to be rotate. So I'm going to go forward a few frames and have it sag from the weight of gravity. Go a few frames up, have it go a little bit up. And then when you're doing overshoot, the keyframes will get closer and closer and move less and less. So if the first dip is -3, and then I went +2, I'm going to go forward a little bit, and then I'll go -2, go forward a little bit more. I'll go +1. Zero. And I'm going to ease these. So I'm going to select them all with box selecting. Hover over, right click, keyframe, easy ease. Now let's see that. See that? That type of stuff, thinking about that, is what's going to sell the motion, give it some weight, give it some character. Okay, so like I said, come to lab as often as you can, because I'm going to teach you to help push your ideas, and the stronger your ideas, the more you're going to stand out in the job market. So let's do, I'm going to break this down real fast. Let's say that's the first part of your S. I'm going to hit deselect. And there's the second part of the S. And I just did this blindly with ugly colors. So we were saying, oops, let me hit undo. Think about how your letters are going to be above and below the letters. I mean, the sword, because you want it like interweaving between them. So figure that out and break up your shapes. And think about how the letters are going to come in and, you know, really push that look. Let me give this a gradient real quick so you can see what I'm going to do in a second. And let's, oops. There we go. Remember, you can drag this to adjust the gradient, and we'll change the color. It's not going to be red. Let's make it white just for the fun of it. Okay. So we'll pretend this is your sword. Light sweep. We're already at 32-bit. So we'll have it go through there. It jiggles a little bit from the weight. Then we can throw a good old-fashioned light sweep on it. 1 second, let me move the layer up so we can see what's going on. Like such. And then, for light sweep, you animate the center of the effect. So I'll start it off of the object we want it to be on, move forward a little bit, and then animate it across it, like such. And let's preview that. Like such. See that depth it adds to the artwork? Looks like a beveled edge now. So, you know, you might want to think about things like light sweep and one of the 12 principles of animation, overshoot, with like, you know, the rotation, giving it some weight as it hits its target. And the lettering will be the trickiest thing for you to figure out. But, you know, you've got time, you've got an idea. You've already seen how quickly you can build upon your concepts for animating. And like I said, you just keep working on it little by little, and I'll help you push that idea over the weeks until the assignment is due. So just stay on top of it. Time management is everything. Does anyone have, okay. Yeah, no problem. Like I said, and this is going to be available, and I'm going to edit it down as well, and put some great, you know, club tunes that, you know, everybody's heads bopping along as they're learning. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions while I'm here, feel free to ask. I like some of the ideas that are coming along. Like I said, just be careful when you've got a lot of inanimate objects, like I said, like with the cake, but doing things like having the pastry tube and the hand, that'll help elevate that, because you're saying, here's what's motivating that motion. Those little things will always help your work stand out, rather than just having the lettering magically appear. Yeah, and since we've got a moment, no, you know what? I'm not even going to torch you with particles tonight, but I could dive into that next week. Anyone have anything they want me to go over again? Let's see. I could show you the speed graph one more time, just so everyone's got that worked out. I'm going to do a circle this time. And I'm going to give it a fill with no stroke, just because I don't feel like doing that right now. And I'm going to pick blue. Sure, why not? All right, now I'm going to do scale this time. I'm going to go there, oops, and there. I'm just using the empty diamond. So I'm going to go from 0 to 100 to 0. So we're going 0, 100, 0 over time. For my cake animation objects, should I make those all in Adobe? Okay, that's a good question. Now, if you're really strong with Illustrator and you want that detail, yes, you can do it in Illustrator. And I'll show you how to import them and animate them. If you're working in Illustrator, use layers, meaning we'll pretend this is the cake. Have that on a layer. Your frosting, have that be a layer. Anything else, make sure each individual piece is its own layer. Like the pin and the handles can be one layer, but you want that to be its own layer so that you have an easier time animating them. Do you understand? Let's do a quick test actually while we're here. I'm going to hit Illustrator because they keep changing the software and updating it without really notifying people of things. Also, when you're in Illustrator, work in RGB. I'm actually glad you said this because it motivates me to teach you a little bit about the fast, easy way of setting up. Right here in your templates on the splash screen, HDTV 1080, that's what we're working at. So if you click there, you're already set up to be the size you need in After Effects. Bang, there you go. That part is out of the way. Let me zoom out a second. This is the edge of the screen, so I'm going to do this real fast and we're going to find out how this comes across. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go File, Document, Color Mode, RGB. You want to be in RGB. CMYK is only for print. Cyan, magenta, yellow, K the key color. That's print only. RGB is for all multimedia. Ink is made up of, the colors are made up of layering inks. When you're doing multimedia, it's light layering on top of light, creating colors and tones. That's why you only need RGB, red, green, blue. So I'll call this cake. And now I'll do a rolling pin. And again, I'm just doing this fast so we can see what's going to happen. Now I click the new layer button right here and I'm going to drag that selected object up here, but I'm sure you probably already know that. I'm just going over it for those who don't. I am naming my layers so that they come in named in After Effects. I don't want to have to figure out what's what. Okay, there's the rolling pin, there's that. We'll do the text. We'll pretend that's, let's see. Okay, that'll be the name. And I'm going to convert this to text, to characters. I went type create outlines. And just for the fun of it, we'll pretend that this is a candle that I'm drawing. And I'm going to color that, and then I'll show you the flame in After Effects. Oops. Let me undo that. You know what? I'm not going to color that. I'll color it in After Effects. All right, so we've got 4 layers. And I'm going to put this on my desktop. I'm going to save it as AI. We already know it's RGB. Illustrator 2020. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm just going to go here. All right, now let's close this. And we'll start a new project. And I'm going to go File, Import File. And we'll go to the desktop, find our fast test. Now, instead of import as footage, I'm going to click Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, and we're going to see what happens. If we're lucky, it'll keep everything on its own layer that I created. So import as, Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, hit import, and it created a composition up here. So I'm just going to drag it into here, and I'm going to double click to open it. And there's everything on its own layer. All right, so the candle, that was bothering me. I did not colorize it. And it's an Illustrator layer. So I'm going to right click on it and choose Create, Convert Shapes from Vector Layer. Now it's shapes in After Effects. So that means I can go into it and I could just change the color of it. Let's say we want it to be blue. Now it's blue, okay? So you can turn Illustrator layers into shapes, and working the way we did, everything's on its own layer. Now this is incredibly important when you're working with Illustrator artwork that you keep as Illustrator artwork. It's so important, I'm going to waste your time by magnifying in so that you can see what I'm talking about. These are your switches. Remember, there's your little boxes. These are your modes. So to toggle back and forth between switches and modes, I want to be in switches. Anything you keep as an Illustrator layer, click this middle thing with the gear. That's called continuous rasterize. What that's going to do is going to keep your artwork crisp and fresh no matter what you scale it up to. So if you've got a lot of detail, click that on and your artwork will look the way you want it to. Now let's see, here's the logo. I could also throw an effect on there of a fill. Let's try that. Let's see what we can do. I'll throw a fill on there. And there we go. Now we can color it whatever we want. Let's just do yellow so it stands out. Okay, perfect. And I'll put a solid color behind there. I right-clicked in the empty space. You could also go Layer New up here. I'm going to make this dark green just so it's everything stands out. Okay. Now, you notice I drew a candle, but I did not draw the flame in Illustrator. I'll show you why. With nothing selected, let me make my color red first. Just go draw a simple shape like that. Okay, very simple flame. I can animate this flame very easily in After Effects. And you can use fractals and noise to animate shape layers. Now this one is a little bit more advanced, but I'm just showing you how you can take, this is a very poorly drawn flame, but I'm going to make it almost look realistic with the motion while still keeping the stylized artwork. Now, this is like several weeks into the course, but I'm just going to show you this just so you can see how you can breathe life into simple shapes through After Effects. So I'm going to use Fractal Noise for this. And I'm going to create a new layer to add the fractal into. New solid. And Fractal Noise, I'm just going to throw right on that layer. I'm going to up the contrast. When you're working, I'm going to use this as a map. And when you're using maps to animate things, and like I said, we're going to go over this deeper later on in the course, but I'm just showing you, like, black will be 100% of something and white will be 100% of something in the opposite direction. So if the white is going to distort the shape I just drew, the black will not distort it. And then the tones of gray are what will be like between 50 and 100%, or, you know, towards the negative for that motion. So I'm going to just quickly look at this. And so fire goes up. So I'm going to animate this fractal to go up. First, I'm going to pre-compose this real quick. And move all attributes into new composition. When you move all attributes, that's going to put the keyframes and everything inside there. We're going to be diving into that deeper, but so here's my fractal, and I'm going to want it to move upwards. That's under transform, because that's where you can do things like offset turbulence. So I'm going to click there, move forward, and have it go up. You can see it's moving up. Let's see how fast it's moving up. It's not moving up that fast, so I'm going to increase that number. Now see how fast it's moving. Nope, want to go faster than that. Let's just do it with a big number and see what it's looking like. That's way too fast. Let's try half that. That's still too fast. Let's do half of that again. This is why I like working with numbers, because that's a little better. And so we got that. Now see what that's going to look like. 1 second. Zoom in here. And again, I'm just doing this quickly, but I'm going to dive into this during the semester. Okay, so we've got our motion, and that's way too fast. So I'm going to decrease the amount it's moving. It's a little better. Then I can just make some adjustments. Let's hide that. So I didn't even have to animate this flame. I just used a fractal map to animate that. I'm just, like I said, I'll be diving into that later on this semester, but let me move this flame over a little bit, and I'll throw a glow on it. And I can duplicate that layer, change the color a little bit, and adjust this a little bit so it's different from the first one. And let's try messing with the blending mode of that real fast. Let's try. See how that one looks. Shrink that down a tiny bit. See, little tricks like that, you can get some, interesting complex animations pretty quickly. I'm going to teach you all these tricks. Like I said, I'm just showing you some ideas tonight in lab just so you can see the possibilities and for coming up with more complex animations pretty quickly. So we'll be diving into that a little later. I would definitely suggest animating the flames on the cake with something more detailed like this. And I do that in like just a couple of minutes worth of work. I could always fine tune this and make it look better, but I'm just showing you can use things to drive your animation other than just keyframing as you go along. I'm not going to save that. All right, any other questions while I've got people here? Oh, I'm going to go over the speed graph one more time just because it's so important. So I'm doing scale again. So I'm going to go from 0. And I want my anchor point in the middle, so I'm not moving it. 0 to 100, then back down to 0. Okay, so here's our motion. And these are linear keyframes, so it really has no weight to it. It's just going like that. So first thing I'm going to do, moving this right here, this blue bar, that's your render area again. So I'm only going to render to about there. Save processing power. So I'm going to select them all, or you could click the word scale, right click over it, keyframe assistant, easy ease. So just doing that, change the motion. Now I'm going to go into my speed graph with those selected. Now let's think about this. As it goes up, it should slow down the higher it gets to the ground. Higher from the ground. So I'm going to have it slow into there, and let's have it speed out. So it's going to go faster and then slow down. See how that already changed the motion? Then I'm going to have it speed into it going to the ground, and I'll have it slow out of here just a little bit. See the difference already? It's got more character now. And I'm also thinking more realistically. It goes faster down and slows as it gets up. So that's a great use of the speed graph. And don't forget, when you duplicate a layer by hitting Command D, that duplicates all your keyframes, your effects, and any speed graph stuff you did. So if I slide this down a few frames, and let's do right about there. So we'll go a few frames. I'll change the color. Like such, or if I wanted it to look like it was punching a hole in, I'd have it the same color as the background. See? And you could add to the complexity of this however you want, just by keep duplicating it, sliding it down a few frames, changing the color. Duplicate it again. Change the color, and you'll keep getting different animations. And then when you want it to finally go away, I could just make the final color be the color of the background. Like such. When you duplicate your layers and spread them out a few frames apart, that's called offsetting your animation. I only did one set of keyframes, but I duplicated that layer, slid it down a few frames, offsetting it, and then I just changed the color of what I was animating. Like such. So if you think through your animation, you can come up with some quick results doing this. And just for the fun of it, let's use a displacement map over this. See what happens. So I'll add a new solid. Actually, no, let's not even do that. Let's say I don't want this clean geometric shape. I want to roughen it up a little bit, okay? But I don't feel like having to apply a roughen edges to everything. If you apply an adjustment layer, it'll affect everything below it. So let's see if I put the roughen edges on the adjustment layer. Yep, already it's working. Let's do that, and let's increase the sharpness. Like such. Let's try spiky for the fun of it. There we go. Okay, sure, why not? Again, I'm just showing you ways to get playful with your animation. So putting the roughen edges on the adjustment layer affects everything below it and saves myself time. Like such. Yeah, it is a little bit like the Looney Tunes. You're right, it's almost along the same lines. So if I throw a glow on there, it'll affect every layer below it. And again, playing around with the threshold and the radius gives you a different look. And all that was just from some simple geometric shapes that we roughened up and added a glow to give it a little bit more life and interest, visual interest. So these are all just things to think about with pushing your animation. You know, can you duplicate layers? Should you offset them? What effects can you apply? Thinking about the timing, using your speed graph wisely, applying the 12 principles of animation. So far we've covered easy ease, you know, slowing in and slowing out, overshoot, which we did with the sword tonight, going past and, you know, back and forth, and squash and stretch with the bouncing ball in the lecture for this week. So if anyone else has any questions, you know, feel free to ask away. We still got a little bit of lab time left. What's going to happen if I change my roughen edges even higher? And what if I put a turbulent displace on there too? It's all about playing around and just, you know, trying different things. You know, having a strategy is good, but not being afraid to experiment, save frequently so that you don't lose anything. Like, look what turbulent displace did. You know, added that extra little bit of life. And there's different presets you can try. That's funny because it looks like it's imploding a little bit from the energy. So if no one has any other questions, you know, just keep working on your storyboards, your ideas, your artwork. You know, watch it with inanimate objects. Come up with ways of moving them. I'll show you how to cheat some camera motion if you're using 2D layers. If you're using Illustrator, make sure you layer things out like we did here and save it in the exact same fashion that I did earlier. And when you import it, make sure you do, composition, retain layer styles and sizes or whatever it was. And that's about it for tonight. But like I said, keep emailing me, showing me your ideas, putting them in Google Drive. I'm going to look real quick to see if anybody added anything new tonight while we're here, because that's what lab time's all about. Nope. Okie doke. So again, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm here to help push your ideas. It's not me being critical of you. It's me helping maximize your time in my course to learn as much as you can and have your best chance at finding a job after you get out of school. So I'm teaching the modern skills that are in demand. Any tips for timing and animation oh, that's a great one. Tips for animation timing in animation hierarchy. Love it. Okay, so let me close this. Yes, let's go back to the frosting. Okay. Now, this first swoosh would be where we start, and I want to wait till I'm done that swoosh to start the next one, because the piping would have to go to here and then there. Like that. Wait a moment. Looks like a little bit of, extra motion there from the gravity of the frosting coming out. Like that. So I had to wait for this stroke to get done before starting that. That's an example. Yeah, no problem. It's what I'm here for. I want people to be successful in life and learn as much as possible. And like I said, just using simple shapes, I can teach you these concepts faster, and then you can apply them with your fine-tuned artwork. It's all about learning the concept and then applying it how you want. So this is an example of animation hierarchy. This needs to be done first, and then that one. Timing. All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Christian. Now, timing. Think about, you don't want to lose the viewer. Like, if you took 10 seconds to draw this title, you're going to lose the viewer. Like, this should only take a couple seconds because you're doing the same animation technique for each letter. So if you're not showing them something new, don't put them to sleep by, dragging it out. You'll lose the viewer. So keeping it moving and where you're drawing the eye and how the elements come in. Like, this will be the next letter, so that animation hierarchy makes sense. The glow, things like that, those are helpful things to do to add some extra life to your animation after the logo has resolved itself. So make sure things make sense when they come in, like I did last week with the hand catching the hand sanitizer. It would look silly if the hand sanitizer dropped in the air and stopped. You need the hand there first to make sense that the hand caught the hand sanitizer. Things like that. Like, it will make sense. Let me show you another little tip example. Let's pretend, okay, so I'll put a line right down here, and I'll give it no fill, and I'll give it a stroke. Yeah, sure, we'll do red, make it a little thinner. Okay. And I'm too lazy to change the font, so you're gonna have to deal with that. And I'm gonna duplicate this text and move it so I don't have to bore you with watching me write it twice. Okay. All right, here's the idea. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 elements, okay? And I'm going to add a little bit of a taper to this and then some trim paths. Let's taper that a bit just to give it some classiness. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is all about timing and animation hierarchy. I want the stroke to come down, hello to come out this side, goodbye to come out that side, and then the flourish. And I'm going to have the flourish be beneath the stroke to add a little bit of depth. Like such. Okay, so first I'm going to have this stroke scale in. I could either scale it non-uniformly from the center or have a trim path drive it down. I want it to animate non-uniformly from the center, so I'm going to hit S for scale. Let's see, it's going to be this one right there. All right, so I'm going to non-uniformly scale this because if I do a trim path, the trim path will go straight down or straight up. If I non-uniformly scale this with the center point here, the anchor point in the center, it'll come out from both sides and look pretty nice. So I'll have that be pretty quick. And I'm going to work backwards. Let's go there. So I did the empty diamond to add my keyframe. So this is going up like that. I'm going to easy ease it by hovering over, right clicking and hit easy ease. Let's go to our graph. Since it's springing on, I'm going to want it to if this ever happens to you, let's make sure we're in the speed graph. Yeah, we're in the speed graph. Okay. Just make sure you're grabbing the right influence handle. So it's going very slowly out of the first keyframe and building up a lot of speed towards the end. Like such. Click speed graph to get out of it. And also, here's another tip when you're animating. This is your preview quality. I'm going to drop this down to 1/4. That means it's blotchy and pixelated, but it will render very quickly. That's another way of saving time when you're experimenting with your animation. See how fast that rendered? Instant. I'm going to have this go a little bit, just drag it so it's a little slower, like such. And you know what? We talked about overshoot, so let's drive that home. I'm going to go a little bit past 100, move forward, go a little bit below 100. And if I looked at the numbers, but I'm not doing that because I just wanted to just show you this again. And remember, you want to go less in each direction and the keyframes get closer and closer together. Like such. It would have been faster if I did it mathematically, but live and learn. Now see if that gives it some extra life. See that? All right, so that's the first thing to pop up. And I can say, do I still want, I'm going to have this come out while the overshoot's still going on. So there's hello, hit P for position. This is where I want it to start. And I want it to be out by there. Now I'll add another keyframe. So I'm going to go to my first keyframe and I'm going to have it come in this way. Like such. And I'm going to use masks to hide this. So there we go. Oops, let me hit undo. I'm going to easy ease that by right clicking. And I want it to slow down as it reaches the end because it's slowing into place. I'll have it speed out a little bit. So it's going very fast out of the first keyframe and getting slower towards the end. That's the motion I want there. I'm going to zoom out. And if this is when that's coming out, I'm going to wait till about here and then have goodbye start coming out. This is just my choice as the designer. And I'll go forward however long I feel like. and I'm going to have goodbye come from the opposite direction. This creates some visual contrast. I've got things moving in opposite directions. I'm going to select all those, easy ease them, go to my speed graph, and I'll again have it go very slow into that and a little bit fast out of it. U on the keyboard to hide all those keyframes. Let's preview the motion. Why did that get messed up? So there's hello. Okay, hello's coming from there. Oh, hello and goodbye. Okay, I got it. All right, it'll make sense once I mask it. All right, so we're all done. I'll move to about here. Say there. Okay, that'll be the end of my animation. Now, when I showed you making that pre-comp for the fractal, I put all attributes into a new composition. I'm going to do that here too, and I'll show you why. Let me hide goodbye. Remember, I said if you've got a layer selected and you use a shape or the pen tool, you'll create a mask. So I'm going to mask this text. Watch what happens. The mask moves with the layer. This is good and bad. If you wanted to do that, you're done. You don't need to do anything. I do not want the mask to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-compose that by right-clicking. Move all attributes. Now my keyframes are inside this pre-comp. So what I'm going to do is with that layer selected, now I'm going to draw my mask right to where the text, right about there. And the fast and easy way is putting the red line on top. So that way, look at that. Now the text is magically appearing because the mask is staying still and my keyframes are inside that pre-comp for my type. That's one way of fixing that issue. Like such. I'll show you the other way with the word goodbye. So goodbye is going to pop out from the other direction. Now, if you don't feel like doing masks, you could use an alpha mat to have goodbye come out of. With nothing selected, I'm going to create a shape right there. And I'll give it a fill with no stroke. Let me give it a color so you can see what's going on. I'll do yellow. And no stroke. Okay. The alpha mat will show... Where's my goodbye? It's got to be right over top of it. So with alpha mats, you can animate them or, do whatever you want, but it's really the alpha of that layer. What is the positive space? I'm going to hit this button, shows and hides transparency. This grid right here, that's your alpha. That's all transparent. This is the positive space. This is the negative space. I'm going to turn that back off. So with this, I'll call this my mat just so you can follow along. The mat or the mask is always above what you want to mask. So I want to mask the goodbye text. I've got to be in my modes. Here's my switches. Here's my modes. This is the layer that I want to be masked. So under my track mat, I choose alpha mat, and the layer above is what's creating that mask. We'll be covering that later on in the semester. I'm just showing you to here. So we're almost done. We've got the line appearing, that word, then that word. We already did, we got a little bit of overshoot. We did our speed graph. Now the final flourish, this right here, the boom, 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 right there. That's why it pays to name your layers. I'm going to add a trim path to it. And now I just figure out when I want that to draw on, right? Once goodbye is fully on the screen, before it stops moving, I'm going to go to my trim paths, and I want this to go from left to right. So let's try, yep, I started here. Here's my start, and there's my end. I'm animating the end point. So I go there, And let's say I want it to be about that long. I'm just eyeballing it, like such. And I'm going to easy easies. And I'll go to my speed graph, and I'll have it go very fast into the end. And a little bit slower out of the beginning. And let's zoom out. And I'll hit the U key to hide those keyframes, and let's take a look at it. Like such. So that's an example of figuring out your timing and your animation hierarchy. These words need something to shoot out of. That's the red line. I gave the red line some extra life with some overshoot. This word's coming out first, followed by that word, wrapping it up with the flourish. Now let's pretend this is your logo. Again, like I said, think about ways of keeping it interesting over the last few seconds of your resting logo so people have time to read it. I'll bring back that classic light sweep. You know what? Let me show you a different one. Let's do light rays. Is light rays there? Okay. So I'm going to try this with the blue line so that the thing's coming out of this flourish. Let's see what happens here. Okay, there it is right there. Now, I know what's going wrong here, and I'll explain it to you in a second. We talked about negative space, okay? And this effect is not working properly because of the bounding box. So you already know what alpha is now. Alpha is the positive and negative space. This positive space and the alphas around it. This layer has an imaginary rectangle around it. It's always going to be a rectangle or a square. That's the bounding box. The bounding box for this layer is cutting off that effect. So I'm going to delete that effect in my effects control. If I simply pre-compose that layer, watch what's going to happen here. Here's my imaginary box for that shape layer, because that's the full amount of space this layer takes up. If I pre-compose that, remove all attributes. I always move all attributes. Now if I throw the effect on there, the effect is working properly because the bounding box is now the full size of the screen. So let's see what happens if I increase the radius of that, change the intensity, and I'll just have it go up and down this point right here. So that would be my center. So I'll have it start here, go forward, and move straight up. Add a little bit of interest now that the logo has animated on. And then we'll throw a light sweep on, say, goodbye, just for the fun of it. Let's see what happens when this moves. See, let's try a color. See if we see it then. I'm just experimenting here. Now we're not going to do a light sweep on there. We could let's just do a simple glow. I'll throw it on the word goodbye, just for the fun of it. So there's our sweep, the light rays, and the glow. Let's see. See, again, there we're hitting the bounding box of that word. You gotta be careful of that. So here's where I want it to end up. I'll move forward and we'll have it be here. So I'll just copy those, paste them there, go back in time, set these to 0. Let's say I just have it fade off right there. So I'm going to copy the first ones that are 0s, like such. So there's your motion, there's your interest. Now that the logo has stopped moving. So there's still stuff going on to keep the viewer interested, but your main logo has resolved itself. All the pieces are where they are when you want them to appear. There's just, like I'm showing you some ways to add some extra life once, your logo has stopped moving. If I'm unsure about that direction of the right there, I can just change where that's moving from. I could just click on my arrows like I've shown you before. Let's get rid of that first keyframe. Good. And then I go to my second keyframe and I could do this again and click there. So now it's moving side to side like such, but it's not really following the curve. So that's where I add some extra keyframes along the way. To help it follow that shape a little bit better. I'm just showing you a little bit of basic troubleshooting. There we go. And that suddenly appears there. So I'm going to animate the intensity to have it come on quickly. So it's more motivated. See, like that. So that's just a little things for you to think on is, animation hierarchy, information hierarchy, keeping a little bit of interest after your logo has resolved itself onto the screen. And, just experimenting with different ideas. So, thank you for sitting through this week, and I'll see everyone next week. Stay in touch. Send me all your updated work through Google Drive, and I hope you have fun learning this semester and have a great weekend.